Don't say that.
Well, with this sad news, why don't we get started and we'll see if we can make it a little more pleasant.
Okay.
Right. Let's have the Planning and Zoning Commission. Is this one?
And just as a reminder, you got to be within an inch or two for it to work. Inch or two.
Is it on now?
Lean back like this, like this. Inch or two.
Okay. We'll just do it like this. Is that okay? All right. Okay. Thank you all for being here this morning. This is really more than anything else an organizational meeting. Scott and I have worked on the agenda, and so we'll see where we're headed. Let's have a moment of silence. Amen. Thank you. Is there a motion to adopt the agenda as it's the second one that was sent out, the revised one? Is there a motion to adopt that agenda? Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, let's wake up a little bit this morning, group. Okay, the minutes of the December 9th meeting. Is there, those have been circulated. Is there a motion to accept those?
I so moved for approval.
Is there a second? Angie, I just have one request on the board members. I don't think you need to rewrite this for that, but going forward, would you separate out the board members to the regular members, the ETJ member and the alternates? Because these are like Sally is shown as a board member, but she's really an alternate. I think everybody else is the same. That'd be great. Thanks. Okay, so the minutes are approved. Next, the organization of the P&Z, our terms, I think virtually everyone's term expires January 31st. And the council is going to vote on a number of those today. Everybody has filed a request to be extended, and presumably they're going to be approved tonight. But I thought if we went ahead and elected officers, we could get started and then be organized going forward. And the suggested officers are myself as the chair, which I'm happy to have anybody serve as chair. Vice chair is vacant, and the secretary, it'd be my sense that we ought to appoint Angie again, since she really is the clerk anyway. So would anybody like to make any motions?
Mr. Chair, I would make a motion that we approve you as to continue as chair. Your wise and good leadership will continue. Hope you'll agree to do that. I would also move that John Hinkle be elected as vice chair and that Angie be elected as secretary.
Thank you. Is there a second to that motion? There's a second. Best way. Are there any other nominations? I guess is what you should do. Seeing none, all in favor of the election of those persons, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. We will endeavor to proceed. Hopefully, we won't have as many meetings as we did the last 2 years, but we will be as organized as we need to be. Three what? Oh, you mean the 3 years? I thought you meant 3 meetings.
Mr. Chair, I should have said when I nominated John Hinkle, just pointed out for those who don't know, John has previously served as chair of the Planning and Zoning Commission in the past, so I feel like it's a very logical choice to be the vice chair in case he needs to step into that role. He certainly has the experience to do so.
And he knows the community very well. So, okay, we thought we would just list the current members and what the vacancies were. And you'll see under current status of P&Z Commission members, we have 4 that are current and whose terms will presumably be extended tonight. We have a vacancy, I'll say, in the Mason Blake slot, and the council, you'll see on their agenda that they intend, or there's a motion to elect Julie Shell to that spot. And there's another vacancy, and that is not being, well, no, that's being filled by, they intend to nominate Liz Johnson, who's also a resident. Then on the ETJ, Alan's term expires January 31st, as do all of ours at the moment. And there's a difficulty with Alan under the statute and under the ordinance, in that in order to serve as the ETJ representative, you must be a resident of the ETJ. And I don't think you are. So we've asked Susan Taylor Rash for some opinions. The North Carolina School of Government has said you have to be either a full-time resident or a part-time resident. So we want to know if, and they're going to investigate this, whether you could go out there and have a tent for a month or a week or
For
whatever.
one night.
Or one night or whatever, but you're not going to be reappointed tonight.
Okay,
So
well, I know where there's a caboose I could probably rent for fairly cheap, so. Free.
So we will, although your term will continue until the 31st, but Alex or Scott, in talking with Tom, he doesn't serve until his vacancy is filled. His term ends. Is that right? So we will probably have a vacancy for at least 60 days, because as Alex has said, they intend to ask Buncombe County to fill that position, which is required for the ETJ. And I think that, it's my sense that they're going to request that they reappoint you. But, well, I don't think they can do that because you're not a resident. So anyway, there are issues there that we
Okay.
have to resolve. Yes.
Would it be appropriate to make a motion that we request the town council suggest Alan Crawford as a member of to represent the ETJ?
Well,
Well, I
to
think
just to
we can-
clarify that it's state law that states you have to be a resident
resident.
of the ETJ, not a property owner.
Right. My point was, the county's done it before. They've appointed somebody from Black Creek Road, and so forth. I'm just, if the planning and zoning officially asks the council to put forth a name to the county to consider.
Well, Alex has already said the town doesn't have to do, the council doesn't have to do that. And the town intends to submit that. And I'm not sure that we should get in the business of doing that. Although I think all of us would want Alan to come back. He's done a great job. Scott?
Sure, and just to clarify that the county, even in its appointment, I would assume would reference state law, which very clearly states resident, not owner or interest or whatnot. So it's following I think it's in the best interest of the town and probably the county to follow what is laid out in state law. If there's a difference of opinion on that, that's fine to discuss, but that's my quick take on it.
Well, we would want his votes to be recognized. And if he's improper, then his votes presumably would be tossed out.
Just for a matter of interest, how many residents of the ETJ are there?
There are only 3 part-time.
3 part-time residents.
So you're referring to property owners or actual
Residents.
number of
People
people?
that have a bed.
Okay, just
Residents.
clarifying,
There are 3 property owners that own homes up there
right,
and stay in them on some occasions each year.
right.
Just a matter of
Yep.
interest.
Sure.
But my
And they-
understanding, 20 years since I was in planning and zoning, but the first time, but the county has routinely appointed just somebody to be an ETJ representative on the
And
planning
that,
and zoning. And I think the idea was it wasn't just
Well, the ordinance and the statutes say what they say.
and that may have been under a previous legal framework. I mean, 160D is, it pulled from elements of 160A, which was cities, and 153, which was counties. There may, the residency requirement may be an entirely new element within that compared to 160 and 150, 153. I'm not as familiar with the previous legal framework or history.
If I might jump in, Mr. Chair, on the second page of our
Yep.
packet here is that 160D 307. If you go to section B, about seventh line down, begins at the end of the sixth line.
Yep.
If there is an insufficient number of qualified residents of the ETJ, other residents of the county may be appointed.
Yep.
So the authority is there. I would say 3 part-time residents is an insufficient number.
Right.
So I think the county could appoint anybody in the county at that point.
Wait a minute, would that mean I was right?
I think you may be.
You may well have been.
You were right. So in view of that statute, I don't know that would be anything improper for either the town or whoever's making the request to suggest Alan, who has experience and has served for 3 years and owns property up there and is a resident of the county.
Yep. Well, I'm going to ask Wade if he'd like to make that motion that we suggest to the town that they do, because of the
Insufficient.
insufficient number of residents, that we do ask that Alan be reappointed because of the job he's done. If someone would like to make that motion. What? Yeah.
Yes.
And then if they don't do it within 90 days, then the council may do it itself.
Right. Correct. Would you like to make that motion? You don't have to repeat it. That's the motion.
I make a motion that planning and zoning recommend to the town council of Montreat that they put forward Alan Crawford's name as potential county resident to be an ETJ representative.
The town council doesn't, Alex has said he's going to submit the letter, not the town council.
That's fine, but he also said nobody's ever responded to him, so just if it helped that the town actually made that request, maybe they would point out, maybe they'd point out, and maybe it would make a difference.
Alex, what's your experience in it?
Just remember to use the mic, please.
Thank you. I think it'll slow the process down to put it before the town council first, before it goes to the county, but we can certainly do that.
Wade, what I would suggest is that you just said that we encourage the town to request and leave it up to the judgment of the council.
My motion is amended.
Is there a
as-
second to the amended motion?
Second.
Yeah.
Second point of discussion, I'm not sure I understand. It seems like it would streamline the process if we just make a request straight to the county,
Correct.
asking them to do it. If involved the town council, it's not on their agenda tonight. The earliest they'd be able to consider any action would be next month.
Yeah, we're not doing the town council now.
Oh, I thought you said that.
No, just doing the town.
The
Okay,
ETJ
okay.
representative is of zero relevance to the town board of commissioners because it's a county responsibility. If the county, for lack of a better word, abdicates or, is inactive on that, then it becomes the purview of the board of
Okay,
commissioners.
so maybe I misunderstood the motion. I thought you said town council. You're saying.
No, I was deleting the word council.
Okay.
So then Alex can take that for what it's worth. So with that in mind, is there a second to the motion?
I'll second.
Is there any discussion? Awful quiet over there, Mr. Hinkle. Well, I'll call that, that's a motion to vote. So all in favor of the vote, say aye. All opposed. Thank you, Wade. And Alan, we hope that you get reappointed.
Yes, I
Very
hope so
soon.
too, because I'm not sure that there's any heating in that caboose up there on the mountain that I have to move into. Oh, is it? Okay, okay. I wouldn't want to accidentally burn it down either. So,
Okay, I really didn't think that would take that long, but what I wanted to do now is to have let's see, the alternate, the alternates, Sally is going to be proposed, and there's a vacancy that they haven't filled yet. They intend to ask John David to fill that, but that he hasn't submitted his application yet, so they're going to wait till next month to do that. Okay, now we go over to Roman numeral 5, which is the bottom of page 2. Just to note our meetings, we may want to come back to this after we discuss the business to see what we want to do. Are y'all okay deferring that until we talk about the work that we have to do?
Please defer.
Okay, so then let's go over to the Romanet 6, which is at the top of page 3. And I'm going to turn this over to Scott now.
Sure. I really just put together this outline, looking at work that was previously done in 2021. Just as a reminder, there was the zoning ordinance update, both for chapter 160D compliance and some town initiated amendments. More recently, there was the discussion about well and septic versus urban water and sewer language, both in the zoning ordinance and more substantially in the general code of ordinances. That has been updated and will be posted to the town website very shortly. The document, the ordinance is updated. It just needs to be posted to the town website just for timeliness and being up to date. Lastly, Dan Dean graciously worked with other members of the commission on updating the Planning and Zoning Commission's rules of procedure. And then moving into topics and priorities for 2022, there's a lot of markup here on the, I just have it as the title of the stormwater ordinance, and I'm sharing this information listed here really just for informational purposes. There's no direct action or request being made of the Planning and Zoning Commission at this time, but just for a little bit of background, the town operates under what's called an MS4 stormwater permit. That's municipal separate storm sewer system. And basically there are a couple of violations on that permit, at least in terms of reporting requirements for it. I started with the town last November and have not had any direct communication or really training on this. So I am working with my colleague, Mary Roderick with Land of Sky to address these permit requirements. They essentially are reporting requirements. They don't necessarily have anything to do with the existing structure or language of the stormwater ordinance. I think the kind of the larger discussion is about revisiting and possibly amending the actual stormwater ordinance. And that has been just on the bullets there. That's been effectively at least prioritized by the town council for next fiscal year, just at least in terms of financial capacity to possibly hire an outside consultant to do a full and comprehensive audit of that. But really, that, the stormwater ordinance is obviously, it's an important element of the town's regulatory framework. First step will be just to come up to date with MS4 permitting requirements. And was again, just making an outline here of what's been discussed to date in terms of assigning a subcommittee derived from the Planning and Zoning Commission and other community members, in addition to, at some point, some third-party consultant or other auditing entity to help with that. So, realize I talked a lot on that, but if you go have any questions on that, I'd be glad to field them if need be. Yes, that's been my understanding to date. Yes, now Board Commissioner Blake has certainly expressed an interest in that. What's that?
I was just saying. when you're speaking.
No.
Okay, next.
The next item concerns zoning setbacks and nonconformities. There's been a question about assigning a subcommittee to further study this. This is an issue that I, as the zoning administrator, have raised since February of last year, and a number of cases, inquiries, what have you, from property owners concerning the question of what I'll characterize as a vertical expansion on the existing footprint of a given building that is, yes, technically non-conforming versus a horizontal expansion. I think there's also currently the ordinance does not have a list of allowable encroachments within setbacks. This is a fairly common element of most zoning ordinances, recognizing the nuance of the predominant mass of a building versus things like stairs, porches, decks, extending porches, what have you. Just bringing that up as a possible issue of discussion and exploration, particularly given the number of inquiries that I've had over at least the last year from various property owners for various things, which usually end in the answer, you've got to get a variance or go to the Board of Adjustment.
So when Scott and I talked about this, it would seem to me that this would be appropriate for a new subcommittee so that we didn't have to deal with the minutia at a meeting. So I was hoping that we could appoint a subcommittee to start working on this. Not to put him on the spot, but since he did so much on the original zoning ordinance, I would ask Dan if he'd be willing to chair that. And if there are two people that would be interested in serving on that, I would encourage that, or I can talk to them afterwards. I wouldn't think that this would be something that is real urgent, that it could be done over the next couple of months. Would you be willing to chair that?
Mr. Chairman, short answer is sure, and thank you for your confidence and suggesting me. I must say that my initial thought when I saw this on the agenda was that I wasn't sure we needed another subcommittee. Part of it was because I think some of these issues are already addressed, but maybe not in one particular place. I know I haven't looked back at the ordinance since we visited the last 3 years, but I thought there were several places in there where we were talking about setbacks or encroachments, whatever, that made exceptions for, because Wade helped me, we talked about whether it should be 3 feet or 4 feet on a steps or eaves or something like that. So we created some exceptions within the ordinance for particular items. I can't remember where they are. I didn't take the time to look at it before today and apologize for not doing so. But I think we have addressed some of these issues several places. He talks about this 609. I know we spent a lot of time on 609, if that's the ordinance I remember, the front setbacks in developed areas. I know we spent a lot of time on that. I thought we had clarified all of that. So I guess by just reading of this without going any background research was, it may not be as complicated as we think, but that may simplify the work of the subcommittee. If that's what you.
It just seemed to me to be better to have a committee take a look at it.
That's
quickly
fine, and I'll be
and
glad
make
to
a
address.
recommendation.
And second, I have mentioned this before. If we go that route, whatever we do, I think we shouldn't be making changes or even suggesting changes to the ordinance while the current matter is proceeding, I guess now in the courts with the lodge issue. We probably shouldn't be making changes to the ordinance. So yes, I agree with you. It's probably not any urgency.
Right.
as
I
far
would
as
think
timing.
that the next couple of months, because as you say, we had made a decision. I see Priscilla Hayner here, that we wouldn't change the ordinance any further because that might mess up the procedures on what's before was before the Board of Adjustment on the lodge, hotel, et cetera.
Yeah, and as we'll get to later, there've been some suggestions from both Scott and Mr. Solaski for some changes that they determined, despite our 3 years of very close looking at the ordinance and a lot of eyes looking at it. It doesn't mean it's perfect and always room for improvement. And I appreciate their suggestions. And I guess those would need to be incorporated.
That's what
at
I was
some
just
point
getting ready
as
to say, that Mr.
Solaski
Zalaski's
And-
are over on the next page, and
Scott's.
Scott. So I
Yeah,
would.
they're
I
very
would
good
hope that y'all-
suggestions and we're very appreciative and there's always room for improvement in anything that we do. So I think those would probably need to be incorporated in that discussion as well.
Great. And you and I can talk about it, but if Mason would be willing to serve, that would put the two of y'all back together who did such a good job. on
I
it.
would welcome his input. He's
So, yeah.
very good at.
But if anybody here would like to serve on that, please let me know. I would. Okay, Wade would like to do that. So that's one member, and I think I'll call Mason and CTV willing to serve. I don't think it requires members of the commission to do that. Okay, and I'll try to get one more. Okay,
And if he can't, I'd be willing to volunteer to be a part of that too.
great. Super.
Long way to say thank you, Mr. Chairman, for your consideration and confidence in me. I'm willing to serve, sir.
Thank you so much. I appreciate both your competence and your sense of humor, but also your willingness to serve. Okay, back to Scott. Does that help you, Scott?
Yes, thank
Okay,
you.
great.
So the next item that's noted is the Montreat's sign ordinance. I note to date, there's been some discussion from the town attorney on the content neutrality of the sign ordinance. This also comes up in the question of either political signs or yard signs. There's actually currently a Supreme Court case that's centered on content neutrality, City of Austin, Texas versus Reagan National Outdoor Advertising. That has not been determined yet. So the just that top bullet there is just kind of a question statement, really just waiting on the Supreme Court to come to a determination on that to act as guidance. I would advise following up with the town attorney just to see if there's anything in the interim that the ordinance should be adjusted for, just for content neutrality and what have you.
I'll leave you and John to work on that.
Yeah, well, I wanted to update what Scott said. I did call Adam Lovelady, who's the associate professor of public law and government at University of North Carolina. And I asked him if there was any updated material that we needed to consider prior to making our decisions to finalize it. And he pointed out the Supreme Court case that went before the Supreme Court and said that it was his recommendation that we not move forward with any changes because the law itself, once they come down with a decision, we may have to go back in and change everything. So he recommended that we wait till this summer when hopefully the decision will be brought out. So we haven't done anything. I
Okay.
really hadn't even met. I just kept him up to date on what was happening.
And that's probably good advice coming from him.
That's what I figured. He hadn't written any new papers on signage or did he know of any publications? So he said, I think if I was you, I'd just wait.
We probably need to wait till after the Supreme Court's decided and then until after people such as the School of Government, Mr. Lovelady and other legal scholars have interpreted what they said, because the last decision was a 3-3-3 decision and nobody was sure exactly what it said.
Right. Well, with that in mind, let's suggest to John that we defer that until it appears more
Right.
timely and ask you to continue to consult with Mr. Lovelady.
Will do.
Great, thank you. Scott?
On page 5, the next item, it's just simply a note about the 2022 update of the Montreat Comprehensive Plan. A working committee has been approved, and this is just a note that PNC is scheduled to receive reports starting in the summer, moving on, or I guess actually starting presumably pretty soon. I know the Comp Plan Committee is meeting on, I believe, January 26th. And again, under state law, the town is supposed to have a reasonably updated comp plan in place by July 1st of 2022. Reasonably updated has been roughly bandied about as being within the last 5 to 10 years. So under that definition or rubric, 2008 is longer than that time. So there's definitely the impetus to have that in place in order to continue having zoning.
Would you communicate that to the mayor and the chair that
Certainly.
they need to move a little more quickly?
Sure.
Great. Any questions? Seeing none, okay. Next.
Lastly, there is just a note on here about a possible need to update the hillside development ordinance. Currently, there are elements of it that create potential conflicts with the with focus areas of erosion sediment control and the stormwater ordinance. in terms of land disturbance areas and setbacks within that. There's no current action proposed, but I did want to just include this as sort of an ongoing discussion item, just basically kind of keeping the global view of all possible issues in front of the Planning and Zoning Commission.
We probably, as you say that, we probably should communicate to the council that when they do appoint the stormwater committee, that that committee ought to take into account any potential conflicts with either of those two other ordinances, either erosion and sediment control and stormwater. They ought to try to look at that.
Just for a comprehensive
Right.
view.
Thank you. Other questions?
Well, the hillside, if we're gonna not do anything that might be in conflict with the present, pending, possible lawsuit and so forth, until that's resolved, the hillside has no relationship to the controversial MRA and so forth. I've done an awful lot of research on it, and it seems like just a couple of simple things that might be addressed. That we hold off on that till next summer to even talk about it. Seems like wasting an opportunity since we don't have other stuff.
Why don't you discuss particulars with Scott? And why don't we put this on our agenda for our next meeting to note that we may want to consider it a little more quickly.
Okay.
Are you willing to do that, Wade? Sure. Great. Okay, anything else, Scott?
Not on the sort of running list of topics, unless you want to move on to the next item.
Yes, and I think what we did on Solaski and on your comments, we moved that into what the other committee will be considering,
I'm sorry, which other?
to what Dan's new committee would be considering as part of the changes to the zoning ordinance.
Okay, just referring back
That'll go
to
back over to that.
setbacks and nonconformities. It's essentially making it more of an omnibus
Right.
committee.
That's correct. Okay, any other comments or points? I guess points by anyone. I've got a question. I see Priscilla Hayner is here and Alex is here. Could y'all just advise us on the status of the hotel lodge dispute? Dan and I thought that that there had been filed an appeal in the court, but apparently from what Alex said this morning, only the appeal to the Board of Adjustment based on one of Scott's interpretations had been made. Could y'all just bring us up to date on that? Priscilla or Alex? Great, that'd be wonderful.
Hi, Priscilla Hayner. Nice to meet you all.
Good morning.
Those who I haven't met. So Tuesday afternoon, I think there was an appeal sent to the town. And it was an appeal of a specific aspect, a specific issue that rose in the course of the hearings on December 13. So it was an appeal of a determination made by the zoning administrator pertaining to whether you can have more than one principal property on one lot. Because it was a decision of the zoning administrator, it required that that be appealed within 30 days. And that would go to the Board of Adjustment. So it hasn't, no decision has been made about beyond that. Yeah. Is that-
And any other, have y'all filed anything in the Superior Court? Because we had heard that it was.
No, no decision has been made.
Okay,
First step is to wait for the written decision from the BOA.
okay.
It should be within the next week, I guess. I'm not sure. We'll see.
Okay.
And then technically, there's a 30-day period where there can be a decision after the written decision as to whether there will be an appeal to the Superior Court. And so I know that my sisters and the Jones family, my two sisters in the Jones family have standing. I personally don't.
Sure.
And they're considering their legal options, but
Okay.
no decisions have been made. What that would mean. In the meantime, because of the timing restriction, it was required that there had to be this one appeal, which is specifically pertaining to a decision or determination by the zoning administrator.
And I'll just quickly note that I guess the main specific element of the zoning ordinance is it's section 605, one principal building per lot. That's the primarily cited section of the ordinance in the appeal.
Exactly. So there's a the section that defines, that specifically says, under no circumstances shall there be more than one principal building on one lot. If the hotel, I mean, currently all of the 6 structures were grandfathered in and combined into one lot last April, I believe. And if there were to be a change, then this would come into effect, this limitation. And so if the MRA were to build the hotel lodge that is proposed, then there would be 4 structures on the one lot. And the question is, are those 4 principal structures, principal buildings? And if so, that's a violation of the ordinance and it's clearly not allowed. The interpretation that had been presented was by the zoning administrator was that the other 3 would be accessory buildings serving the primary hotel. If you look at the definition of accessory buildings, which is spelled out very clearly in the ordinance, it's quite hard to determine that they're serving the hotel. So it's quite, as the Montreat Stewards put out a statement yesterday, which I'm very happy to make available if you haven't seen it. But one of the concerns, to be honest, is that if this interpretation is the interpretation that Montreat believes is accurate, as was provided by the zoning administrator, then this presumably will have quite a significant effect on all of Montreat. So if you have, the interpretation as described was if you have a second and or third structure that's considered accessory, anyone in Montreat, developer or property owner or otherwise, could build a second and third, at least potentially 4th structure, as long as, and have them rented out, have second homes on their one lot, as long as there's some relationship, maybe somebody's a guest to the same family that stays in the other structures. That's the way I understood it to be presented, and that's why we thought this is a fairly important, significant change to what the zoning ordinance seems to say, and we're told also what North Carolina law says. So we thought it was quite important for there to be clarity, because this would have implications as a precedent going forward for all other lots in Montreat. So it's a big issue. I mean, you all know the ordinance better than I do, but it's you all, many of you worked very closely on the ordinance, so you know the language well. So it's something that deserves close attention. And as I said, the procedure is that it would go to the BOA for consideration on that one specific issue. Now, as to how that affects the rest of the permit that was granted, actually, I don't know the answer to that legally. I think it's a legal question. So it's really only looking at that. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, but it's a little bit, I don't know. I think that the legal minds would have to apply themselves, because the BOA did decide that a permit was granted. So if that came in, obviously that would violate having a lodge, but I don't know how that affects the other BOA decisions. So I think, I have no idea. I don't know how that's decided and who would decide that in fact it would affect the permit decision. I really do not know the answer to that.
I don't have any other comments.
No, I mean, the only other thing, which is probably obvious to everybody here, and it's unrelated is, I know we've all been watching the train move slowly down the track in terms of the new comprehensive plan. And I know that everybody understands how important that is and will want to take part in whatever consultations do take part. And obviously, as you all have been discussing, it's a really quick timeline for having consultations. So I just agree with what you all said about urging expediency on the part of that committee. And I hope that expediency includes lots of opportunities for people to have discussion groups, brainstorming, public input. Because it's such an important document for Montreat, and it's a lot of work, and it's a short period of time. So just to agree with the sentiment of both of those things. But thank you very much. Absolutely.
The mayor has asked, since I will not be here during the transition period, and we don't know the transition period, the mayor has asked Scott to be the town staff liaison representative to the comprehensive plan. So Scott will be part of the committee. Angie will provide minutes, and then there won't be any other staff beyond that. Yes, there's public input built in throughout the contract, so yes. Yep.
I'm sorry. Regarding the comprehensive plan, certainly.
I still like the idea of the caboose better, but I can pitch a tent too. That's a couple options.
Sorry, real quick, you will let me know, I guess, about the full committee, subcommittee makeup of that subcommittee. But I still, my understanding still is there's no urgency or quick timeline on that work. Okay, just wanted to clarify.
No, I'll hold my comment. Thank you.
So we're gonna come back to it now. We'll wait until April.
So what's your pleasure? We could. Got custom meeting. Happy to do that.
Did I have those dates correct? The March or February 4th through March 7th? Okay. Okay.
Maybe there's one. See where we are. See where we are.
Well, I think that'd be good, and I think that the Board of Adjustments has sort of set a standard that maybe we might be expected to meet more than 4 times a year since they finished up 50 hours, just in one case, but anyway.
Well, they have.
I think we met at least 50 hours over the last.
So, yeah, I
3 years.
would support the meeting in March.
The 11th,
I'm sorry.
the 10th, sorry.
So, set our meeting for March.
Yes.
That's fine with me. I suspect in view of the, there's not much happening right now. It's going to be a very brief meeting. I have no problem meeting, but on the other hand, we're just meeting to meet. I'm not sure what we want to accomplish. Yeah, if there's something we need to address, I agree. But if the subcommittees aren't meeting, if there's nothing else urgent, but I have no problem meeting. We've gotten used to meeting very frequently, as you say. So that's fine, absolutely.
So it's tentatively scheduled. Any further business?
Ah.
Aye.
Thank you all for